and you upgraded almost every single position except for defensive end. You went out and spent big money on a linebacker that you wanted, right? Not you personally, Chris, but Matt Eberflus wanted, right? It is your job to go out there as a defensive-minded head coach, one of the only defensive-minded head coaches that was hired during that coaching cycle, and make a difference on this defense.
I was listening to Carmen and Yurko yesterday. They were talking to Mark Potash from the Chicago Sun-Times. They were talking about the Bears. He said this.
This is a big coaching year. I think the most pressure, even more than Justin Fields, is on the coaching staff because this is still a roster that needs to be coached. This is a roster full of players where the coaches make the players instead of getting a guy like Will Anderson where the player makes you a better coach. I think really that's what this year is all about.
That was Mark Potash with Carmen and Yurko yesterday. What do you think of that? Old school, coach him up. Has this team assembled enough talent to do that where the coaching staff can really make the difference and change this team from, say, 5-6 wins to 8-9 wins and actually have a football season where they're not only competing, but they're winning games late? Can this coaching staff make that change?
Well, I think that this is the time to start winning football games, right? So there's a huge difference between, what they did last year and what they're attempting to do this year. I don't believe that they are going to be fine with losing games this year, right? Like if you end up with 3 wins again this year, there's a whole lot wrong with this football team. 1, Justin Fields, probably not the guy. 2, Eberflus, probably not the guy either. Luke Getsy, probably not the guy either. So there's a lot that could go wrong with this football team if they only have 3 wins. Now, if they get to 8, 7, 8, 9 wins, I think 7 is like the minimum before you're like, what's going on, right? So 7, 8, 9 wins right there. It's a big year for Getsy because it's Justin Fields' second year in the system. He should be able to comprehend it now, and you should have a full complement of the playbook for him to use, especially with a guy like DJ Moore coming in, a fast draft pick like Tyler Scott. You've got an enhanced running game now with Devontae Freeman and Roschon Johnson. I also think it's a big year for Eberflus, and not just because he's the head coach and he has to be the one to coach them up and figure out how to win football games and teach them how to win football games as opposed to last year when they were losing all those close games. I think this is a big year because last year was one of the worst, if not the worst, Bears defenses ever. And you upgraded almost every single position except for defensive end. You went out and spent big money on a linebacker that you wanted, right? Not you personally, Chris, but Matt Eberflus wanted, right? It is your job to go out there as a defensive-minded head coach, one of the only defensive-minded head coaches that was hired during that coaching cycle, and make a difference on this defense. Show that, yeah, we understand there's a hole at defensive end, but that secondary, one of the best in the NFC, not even NFC North, one of the best in the NFC. Linebackers on point. We went out, spent a bunch of money on linebackers. Interior defensive line, loaded with talent. Next guy up mentality because the depth is there. It's a big year for Matt Eberflus to not only coach them up, like Mark Potash said, in that old school, hey, we got to win some damn football games, but also Eberflus has to show that he wasn't a mistake hire. Like, they all bought in. At no point did anybody on the team ever tune out Matt Eberflus as a head coach. I'm not saying that that's the problem. The problem now is you've got to show yourself that, like, we brought you in to coach up this defense also. I understand you're not the defensive coordinator and you've got a more head coaching role because you are the head coach, but also this is your scheme. These are your players. Whenever you sign a high-profile defensive player or draft a high-profile defensive player, the immediate thought is, that's a Matt Eberflus guy. That's a Matt Eberflus. Why do you think they went out and got Tremaine Edmonds? That's a Matt Eberflus guy. He's supposed to be a Matt Eberflus guy. So I need to see something from this defense because he's the defensive-minded head coach that was brought in.
Well, and that's why I think it's an interesting point that Mark Potash made to Carmen and Yurko. Who has more pressure in this upcoming season? I mean, for all the love that we give Justin Fields, he really hasn't accomplished anything. Yeah, he can run the football. He's explosive when he gets to the second level against a defense, but his passing has a lot left to be desired, and he has to improve. So, like, when you look at the conversation, and we ask you at 312-332-3776, who has more pressure on this next football season? Matt Eberflus, what Abdalla just laid out, it's his system. He's a head coach that was hired in a cycle where everyone that was hired was an offensive-minded coach, where Eberflus was a defensive coordinator, and now he's here with the Bears? Or is it Justin Fields, who, quite frankly, as a passer, has a lot to prove still? Who has more pressure on them as we look towards this next football season? Bob in Iowa City, you're listening to ESPN 1000. What's up, Bob?
Yeah, good morning. Before I make my point, wanted to ask who ESPN projects or what they project for Carolina, because that has implications for the Bears because of the draft choice.
I can look it up while you give us your point. Go ahead.
Okay. I think there's more pressure on Justin Fields because the Bears made a point of getting another first-round draft choice next year. So if Fields doesn't show marked progress, they're going to look to get a quarterback because the draft is so loaded and it's deeper next year in quarterbacks than it was this year. So that's why I'd say it's on Fields.
Bob, your answer is ESPN's projection has Carolina at 7.6 wins. So just over the 7.
So that means that the Bears should get, if that holds up.
Maybe both teams would be in the middle, basically.
Yeah. Which is pretty good for next year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, and that'd be helpful. And thanks for the call, Bob. We appreciate your phone call. I mean, ideally, Bears fans would hope that Carolina's going to be terrible, and then you get like the number 1 or 2 pick, and that would really help. But
you hope the Saints are pretty good and end up, running away with that division. The Panthers struggle because Bryce Young struggles with adjusting to the speed of the game in his first year, and that you hope they only win like 4 or 5 games. But again, that division is bad.
And the hope would be New Orleans figures it out with a new quarterback, right? Derek Carr is their quarterback going forward. And then also it would be Atlanta maybe turning the conversation from going from a team that is rebuilding to a team that's actually winning football games. I think that's what the conversation in that division, the NFC South, would be. Jim in Crystal Lake, you're on ESPN 1000. What's up, Jim?
Hey, guys. Great conversation. So I got to say that I think, to see who's got more pressure on them, I think that kind of go hand in hand. Because if Justin Fields kind of fails this year, well, that's on the coaching staff. So the coaching staff has to, do the best for Justin Fields to put him in a place to succeed. And the coaching staff also has a lot to evaluate. They got to evaluate these guys properly, put them all in the proper position to succeed, and to make sure that their draft picks fit into where they're wanting to take this team. So I think it's all on the coaching staff, but in a roundabout way, I do think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jim. I do agree with you. They do work hand in hand when you look at this conversation, right? Like Justin Fields needs the coaching staff to help him improve, but he and his play and his decision-making as a quarterback will help the coaching staff with everything else they're doing, especially in game.
But in terms of job security, I don't think we're going to be talking about Eberflus on the hot seat if Justin Fields doesn't improve, right? They have the 2 first-round picks. They have the stability in general manager and now a new president, Kevin Warren. And I don't think that even if Justin Fields is bad this year or doesn't improve and remains the same and they end up moving on from him or not picking up the 5th-year option or whatever it is, they've secured themselves with those 2 first-round picks that they could move up for Drake May or Caleb Williams or J.J. McCarthy or whoever they want to, right? But I don't think that means that Eberflus is on the hot seat. Maybe it means that Getsy's on the hot seat, but I don't think it means that Eberflus is on the hot seat.
I would think Getsy's done enough where there won't be the heat from the fans on Getsy.
I don't think so either.
I think if the defense is really bad again and they're not winning games, I could see Eberflus being in that conversation. Head coaching in the NFL doesn't last forever.
But if it's
you don't get just unlimited time to figure it out.
You don't, but this is only his 2nd year.
Okay.
And I don't think that if the defense isn't playing horribly, and this is on Justin Fields, and he's turning the ball over and he's getting sacked because of his
fans
own
being
thing.
more upset with Eberflus than Getsy. That's what I could see.
Yes, I could see that too. But I still think, as far as job security, the more pressure for this immediate season is on Justin Fields because the Bears have an out.
Who has more pressure on them, Matt Eberflus or Justin Fields? Al and Lamont, what do you think?
Hey, guys. Nice to hear you in the afternoon. I'm going to throw a scenario. First of all, I don't think either has a lot of pressure personally, but I would say if it is, it's going to be on the coach, on Eberflus, because I can see a scenario, hypothetically, where the Bears can average 27 to 30 points a game, where that shows that the offense is shining. But, they're losing 38 to 27. 35-28. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then your defense has failed you, and obviously a defensive coach has failed you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and Al, that's why I think, like, looking back to last season, like, I'm surprised at how bad the defense was with the defensive-minded head coach, right, Al?
Yeah, and I on a side note, Getsy, dude, that guy, he's good for another year or two without any heat on him, regardless of what Fields has done, because of what he did last year with nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And thanks for the call, especially like at the end of the season. Remember the wide receivers the Bears were starting
nobody out there
at the end of the season?
But look at all the additions that they made on defense. That's where their money went to defense this offseason. Most of their draft picks went to, defensive interior defensive linemen, shoring up the corner position, that kind of stuff. And so to me, like, the defense should be not horrible. Like, the defense should be middle of the pack. Yeah, you're struggling to get to the quarterback, and maybe they do something post June 1st cuts or with free agency or something. They still have money to go out and do something. But as of right now, the defense, just because you can't get to the quarterback doesn't mean you can't stop quarterbacks.
Eberflus.
They were 31st against the run last season. They gave up 157 yards per game on the ground to opponents last season. If they can get that to like 15th in the league.
Yeah.
Just middle of the pack.
Be middle of the pack.
Be middle of the pack and just be okay on defense.
Meh.
I think that changes the outcome of a lot of games.
Absolutely.
Bleck Abdalla, who has more pressure next football season, Matt Eberflus or Justin Fields? We'll take your calls next.
This